This is the flight review of the FMS 1400 millimeter Zero. Just got it the other day, put it together, and took it on about, it's had about 4 flights on it. It's 4 flights in total. So this is again the Zero from FMS. So the pros, really quick to put together, really well laid out and labeled wiring for the inside. Came with all the Y harnesses and whatnot. Again, it's all perfectly labeled out, so it made it really easy to snap together. Cons on the setup, these wings and the tail section are all glued together. So if I have any kind of accident or whatever, I have to replace these two. I can imagine it's going to be quite difficult to replace them and probably do some damage to the fuselage. Pros for the flight itself, fantastic flight characteristics. Looks really good in the air, easy to roll, easy to bank, very easy to handle. It handles like a much smaller plane, but still to scale. I compare it to my Jug from Park Zone. It's pretty much identical in handling to that. So if you can fly a, a Park Zone plane, this plane would be pretty much right up your alley. It looks good in the air, like I said. Looks good on the ground, taxiing. You put that drop tank on there in the air, and it looks like you're at in Pearl Harbor or something like that when it's coming in low passes. So fantastic flying, fantastic looking plane. Cons: the wheels on this particular plane, I'm going to show you in a bit, are garbage in my opinion. I've had 4 flights on them. I've repaired it once. Now my other wheel's starting to go. So the electric retracts are the Achilles heel of this particular plane, in my opinion. Another con that I would say is the ESC. Inside here, right up in the nose, I have my ESC. That was a pain in the butt to actually get to work, to sync it with the plane itself, with the receiver, and get it to bind. I actually didn't think it worked, so I took out an old 60 amp ESC from my Habu, put it in there, and it started no problem. The only problem is the 60 amp. This is running a 65 amp right off the bat, what with all its bells and whistles. And the BEC is, I can't remember what the voltage the BEC is running, but basically my Habu ESC with the BSC wasn't enough. So I went back to the store where I bought it, the hobby shop, told him about it. He hooked up to his bench display there. He couldn't get it to work, so we were about to order a new one. He made some calls to his contact. His contact said okay. Here was his supplier. Then he got a call back and he said, oh, the way to bind these things is you have to put it to full throttle, then try to bind it. So he tried it, and sure enough, it worked. So I came back here, although my receiver had already been bound, but I still had to go full throttle to initiate it, then power it up with the battery, and then turn on my receiver, or sorry, my transmitter, and then it chirped and bound, and then I came back off full throttle and everything's fine. So just be aware that if you're flying, I don't know if it's all the ESCs from FMS, but this particular one from the Zero, a real pain in the butt because I had to replace it 2 or 3 times. So it's kind of hard to see in there. So this is how I've got it all set up. My lighting in here sucks. But there's basically my ESCs right up in the nose cavity, which is good. I've got my receiver just velcro to the starboard bulkhead here. It's out of the way. You can see all the wires come back here. I'm going to tidy this up later. Oh, and another con in my opinion on this one, maybe not. It's just I didn't set it up properly. I did undo it. I was flying it, and the spinner on the nose, there's 3 pieces to this prop. There's the main prop that slides onto this hub here. There's a cap that goes on the top of that, and then there's a spinner nub that locks it all into place. So as I was coming in for landing, we noticed something fall off, and I was like, oh, what was that? Came in for landing, took a look at it, and the spinner had spun itself off. It fell into a gully, couldn't find it. So I'm going to have to order another one of those. So the only real 2 or 3 cons I have for this plane, again, the retracts, which I'll show you. Possibly this, but that could have been an operator error, and then just a pain in the butt for for the ESC. Okay, so here I got it on its belly. You can see the port to starboard running light, port being right, of course, green being starboard. You got your flaps here. These flaps are kind of a little bit of a pain in the ass, only because there's a little bit of trouble play in them when I bring them all the way down. It took a little bit of playing around to try to get them. They chirp a little bit. I'm going to have to fine-tune them. But anyways, that's my flaps. Here's the wheels. So that's the wheel obviously in the up position. And in the down position. Looks good. But this one that you can see that does not come up, I had to replace inside, which spins around on the bottle screw. I had to replace that. Basically a little plastic nub that it rides on broke. So I replaced it from, I had a Dynam ME262 lying around, so I took it out of there and replaced it. It's not exactly the same fit, obviously being two different companies, but I got 1 or 2 flights out of it, and then she called it quits. So now it's not working at all. I'd have to go back in there and redo it. So that plastic thing breaks. As you can see on the wheel, okay, right over here, I'm looking down the wheel. There is no spring or anything to absorb all the shock. It's just a straight metal pole with this little plastic shroud into the tire. Yeah, there's a little bit of give in the tire, but it's not much. Not like my Park Zone planes, which have a coiled up spring that absorb a lot of the impact. So with that spring, I think it gives you a little, it's like a shock absorber on a car tire, obviously. So with the impacts on these as they're coming down, I mean, I had 4 landings on here, and on the 3rd one they started to break. As they come down, obviously they're putting some downward pressure on there, and this one I can just pull up on it. As you can see here, it's completely loosened off, and it comes right off, just in my hand. In case I have to push it back down. In actual fact, my last flight, after takeoff, it loosened off so much, like I just pull on it. It's just 2 fingers, and it comes off. It loosened off so much that as I went to put the retracts in, the retracts wouldn't go all the way because it was now pushing in, so it got stuck halfway. I tried it a couple times in flight, and it wouldn't go. Oh, sorry, it was the other way. It was pushed down, so it wouldn't go like this. Okay, so other than that, and I think there's a plastic hub in here. There's 2 little holes, which I'll show you in a second.